Hey guys, welcome to Face to Face with Tarrance Weaver. I'm Tarrance, and today is Father's Day. We're going to have a Father's Day special, and I'm going to have a couple guests come on here. We're going to talk about what it takes to be a father, but also what it took and takes to be a son. Hopefully today you'll be able to gather all of the information you need from our experiences, our talks, things that we've went through in life, along with things that we wish we would have did in life differently. So stay tuned and enjoy this special.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I've been invited here today to talk about fatherhood and what fatherhood means to me, and what being a father is, or what I think being a father is. I am a father of three. I have two girls and one boy. I was raised without my father being around. I did have a stepfather that entered my life at a certain point. But we're here to talk about all those good things, those bad things that happen within those time frames, and I'm ready to get it started.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Jay. Usually behind the camera, but today coming to you in front of the camera. I'm not a father yet, but I do have a father, and I grew up in a household with both parents. My father was very present in my life. He supported me through a lot of different things. I've worked alongside him for a lot of different, operations or different things, whether it be professional or whether it be just working out in the lawn. My parents, and especially my dad, gave me the tools to, believe that I could do what I want to do. But I have different perspectives that will match parallels to Tarrance and, Thomas as well. So really excited to get started here.
Hey guys, I'm Tarrance, and I'm going to talk about fatherhood from my perspective. Growing up, my mom raised me. My dad was around, but my dad was a weekend dad. The way the court system had it set up is I got to visit my dad every other weekend. So majority of the time I spent time with my mom. So I'll pretty much go, let's say out of 14 days, 12 days with my mom and then 2 days with my dad. But the funny thing about it is the moment that I went to my dad's house, majority of the time my dad would leave me with my grandma. So to me being a father now, I look at things a little bit differently. I want to be at all of my kids' games. I want to be that superhero in my kids' life. But also there's some negative things that actually happened in my life because my dad wasn't there. So I'm not a perfect dad. And throughout this session today, we're going to dive deep into some of those intricate things that make me who I am and discuss some of the struggles that fathers have. Again, happy Father's Day to the fathers. Stay tuned. Here we come. Hey guys, I'm excited about this session. So we're going to start it out by asking what is a father, or the definition of a father. Thomas, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak to that matter.
So I would say my definition of a father is the generic definition of a father. We are here to provide and protect our family and our kids. And that's how I grew up thinking a father should be. But as I transitioned into fatherhood, I realized that it takes a lot more than just providing and protecting the family.
And with me personally, it was just honestly the opposite of what my dad was. I literally just want to be present for the most part. Being a kid growing up, I didn't realize that what all it took or entailed to provide and all of the other stuff. But I just knew that I wanted to be there and to tell my son that I love him and to kiss on him and just be there presently.
And it's funny you say that because as a kid growing up, I remember around 15, 16 years old saying to myself also, when I get to the point of getting married and being a father, as long as I do the opposite of what my father did, I'm doing good.
That's good. So what about your perspective, Jay?
Well, I'm not a father yet, even though I am very serious with my girlfriend, and that's down in the plans.
Okay.
But I feel as I come closer to that fatherhood, I think about my past and my upbringing and some of the things that my father has done as I've grown up that maybe I want to change for my kids.
Okay.
So
yours is more or less your dad's a role model in your life, and you want to be more like him.
do want to be more like my dad, of course, but I'm sure you guys can relate that there are some things that we see growing up that we want to avoid. We don't really want to do or repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, a very good conversation that me and Thomas had the other day was about being a father. And I was telling him that my dad wasn't there to hug me, you know, to tell me good night or any of that stuff. And I know earlier I told you guys that my goal was to want to hug and kiss my son all the time. But the funny thing about being a man is, I guess my definition of a man, let's start there, is that you got to be tough, you got to be hard, you can't show no, you know, emotion and all the other stuff. And I think that's the ideal version of, you know, what I guess a black man is. I don't know about, you know, being a white man, but I definitely know, or any other type of man, but I just know that growing up in the hood, I had to be tough, I had to be hard, and I couldn't show no weakness. So when it comes time to me hugging my son, I hug him really quick, and then I kind of let go because I don't want him to, I fear that he would grow to love the hugs of men. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think for us, it doesn't come natural for us to hug another man, you know, or for us to hug any of our kids, you know, because that's not the way we're taught.
But is it because of our upbringing? Because our dads didn't hug us?
Yes, I will say that, and I think it's also because of our environment that we come from. You know, you mentioned how you didn't want people to feel that you were soft, or you didn't want people to feel that, you know, to take advantage of you.
Right.
You know, because I know for me, even today when I take a picture, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to smile. And my wife is always saying, "Why don't you smile?" And I'll say, because I don't want, you know, people to think I'm soft. You know, I don't be smiling in no pictures. Come on. You know? So, but no, it is what you say about hugging. It's not natural for us to hug another man. It's not natural for us to hug our kids and our sons, especially, and say, "I love you."
Okay, so Jay, what do you think about that?
You know, similarly, I know, you know, not talking about hood, but even I grew up in the suburbs. That same energy exists, you know, where the ideal of a man to be tough, to not show any weakness of emotion. I can even think of even being on the playground as a kid and, you know, having those same values because of the male role models, including my father, that wouldn't smile in pictures. I didn't get any hugs as a kid as well, you know?
Yeah.
And you carry that throughout your whole life.
Yeah, you do. What do you tell your son right now if he falls?
Get up, stop crying. You know, sometimes I tell him to spit on his hands, rub it on there, and you're all right.
You'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
You know, and I have to question all three of us. Is that right for us to do that?
I don't know. I almost think that it's something that's generationally passed down from our fathers or granddads to our dads, and it's just given to us, and we're going to give it to our kids, you know? But I think that there is room for emotion. I think there's space and room for hugs, because if we think about this, a mother will hug and kiss their son throughout the lifetime, and then we wonder why our sons draw closer to their moms. Is it because the lack thereof of emotion and kisses and hugs from us?
Right.
Because it stops. And the craziest thing is, I kissed Jackson, and I still kiss him now, but I know there's going to become a point where a man kissing his son isn't cool, viewed from a son's point of view. Like, Dad, stop. You know, like, stop. Right. And that's when "I love you" is going to come from within my arms to hug him and say that, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like, though, that comes from the pressures of society. Like we mentioned, it's generational, and we'd be lying if we said that this current society that we're living in doesn't hold those same values of be a man, you know? And it may not even be the pressures of just your relationship between you and your son as he grows older, but the world around him that he's growing up in. He's seeing that his friends, his, you know, people, his peers beside him, you know, that's weird, you know, because society thinks that's weird. So as he grows into a man, you know, that's when those problems are going to come, and that relationship's going to change.
I actually have a fraternity brother right now. His name is Nate, and Nate and his dad still kiss each other to this day. You know, and to me, for a while it was weird, but I envy it.
Right.
You know, he'll kiss his dad on the forehead or on the cheek or whatever, and there's cultures that do that. You know, show love and affection, but for certain cultures, like, I ain't gonna say beneath us, but it's almost is not respected.
No, and I agree. My wife is Puerto Rican, so within the Puerto Rican culture, when you come into a house, you greet each other with a hug and a kiss.
Okay.
When you leave, you greet each other with a hug and a
Okay.
kiss. So my son's 18, 19, somewhere up in there. He does that today, you know, even with me, with his mother. And I have to say, when he does it with me, there's a little bit of uncomfortableness,
Yeah.
you know.
From
but
him or you?
From me,
Gotcha.
not from him. He could talk to his mother 50 times a day on the phone, and he will tell her, I love you, at the end of that conversation 50 times. You know, even more than what I tell her. I love her, you know. But I think, you know, as we grow, the three of us grow as men and as fathers, we have an opportunity to change some of those things, you know, that we didn't see or that we thought we needed. And I raise and treat my son differently than my two girls. I have no problem or no uncomfortable feeling telling them I love them, you know,
Or kissing them or whatever.
right, or showing emotions with them. But there is a part of me that feels for my son, certain emotions I can't show them, you know, or certain emotions I should teach him not to show.
Wow.
My question to you then is that because you think that it was one, never shown to you, but then also, you know, there wasn't a prime example of what, you know, growing up, because you said you grew up without a father.
Right. I think a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think with me not growing up with a father in my life, there are certain things that I was left to try to figure out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And me figuring it out on my own, you know, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't right. It wasn't the right way, you know. And I can look back on a lot of that now and say it wasn't right. And I would say early on in my life of being a father, there were certain things I should have done more of. I should have hugged my son more. I should have told my wife I love her more. I should have shown more emotions toward them and showed them that it's okay to show emotions and show feelings.
And it seems like you're evolving as a man daily. And I think that that's what a true definition of a man is, one that is willing to learn and to understand their weaknesses or your shortcomings and learn from them. And I realized too, as a dad, as Jackson is growing older and older, the 4-year-old Jackson, dad, that version of me is different than the 5-year-old version of him. And I'm constantly have to grow and evolve as he's growing and evolving and discovering the world. But I think that that's one of the harder things in life too, because in my mind, when I was little and my dad wasn't there and I thought about what I wanted to be as a dad, it was concrete.
Right.
It was simple, it was laid out, it was like, this is what a dad is.
Right. The opposite of him.
Yeah. And now that I am a dad, I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like, I'm making a lot of mistakes, and even moms, you know, we all make mistakes.
Right.
We're not perfect. But as we grow, we're developing and we're a deeper understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, with that, it's like you worry about the mistakes that you might make raising your son because of some of the things that either weren't present or some of the things that you did know or even hear about your father. And I know me, you know, as me and my girl get closer to thinking about having kids, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm a young guy, but I'm going through the thoughts of adulthood, of getting older, and realizing some of those things that are similar in me, that are similar in my dad as well, because of just what I've witnessed growing up. Some of them good, where I'm like, I want to model that, but some of them where I'm like, I'm a little worried if I treat my kids or my son the same way.
And I have to admit though, growing up in a single parent household, I always envied the 2-parent households. And I would see, you know, the kids there with their mom, their dad, and it seemed like everything was happy, and I was missing out. I always felt like I was missing out, even though my brothers stepped in to be more like a dad or father figure in my life. Because I think that we all have that, whether it's a stepfather or uncle or, you know, brothers. Somebody's there to fill that slot, but their definition of a father is going to maybe totally different than what the DNA father or, you know, that they had in their mind. But I was going to say, with you growing up, we talk about some of the positive things. So what about some of the negative things of having 2 parents in a household that you experienced? And the obvious, you know, to address the elephant in the room is white and black. Because a lot of black cultures, we look at whites like, wow, they got it all, they got it made, or whatever.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, some people would say like the two-parent household is an ideal situation to raise kids. But you know, there's obviously the bouts that people have in a relationship that the kids end up witnessing, and that exists. I feel like in any relationship. But the thing that I would say that differentiated my situation is I saw my parents continue to fight for their relationship.
wow.
You know? And I saw my parents continue to grow together. And I saw that my parents didn't give up on each other.
Yeah.
And that carried me to make decisions for myself, both in my relationships that I had in the future, but also just me as a person affecting me and seeing, you know, how to carry my emotions, how to end on a good note, you know, in a sense, and how to move forward when, you know, life gets really hard, and then stick together for the family's sake. So you know that's where I would say the biggest benefit of growing up in a two-parent household is right off the bat you can see that your family is fighting to stay together.
You know, and I think it's funny that you say that, because I think so many times we as parents try to shield our kids from the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
We try to shield them from seeing that it's not all as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
And I think we have to let them see that struggle sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, that helps them to build characters. And as you mentioned, you saw them fight for the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as I'm looking back on it, that's one of the things that my wife and I try to shield our kids from. And that's one of the things that we probably should have let them see a little bit more of it,
Yeah.
you know? You know, from the simple things of, you know, the struggle of us getting up every day, going to work, having to pay the bills. Because I think if you look around in society now, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think a lot of these kids that are growing up nowadays know what that struggle is.
Of course.
They want that instant gratification. They want, you know, our society is built off of that instant gratification. So they don't know what it takes to put in the work, or to get out there and fail 10 different times, and then that 11th time you may succeed.
Yeah.
You know, they want to succeed within that first or that second try.
Yeah.
So.
As a man, I realize that we have struggles, and I wanted to ask you, what is your definition of what a man is?
So I can give you the quick and easy definition of what I think a man is.
Okay.
The quick and easy one is a man is here to provide, protect, and profess for his family. But there's a lot that goes in between that. You know, my definition of what I view as a man versus my definition of what I view as a father. The father portion of it is a little softer than that man portion of it.
Okay.
And I struggle at times of going back and forth between those two definitions, because when you really think about it, you know, fatherhood comes within being a man, or a man comes within being a fatherhood.
Yeah.
So I struggle with the back and forth between the two, and where to bring that softer side in versus that that stronger side of being a man.
Okay. So they kind of overlap a little bit. So with your dad, and then your stepdad, and the man you are today, what parts overlap and what parts?
I would say all of it overlapped, because I didn't really have that. I didn't have my father there to teach me how to be a man, or to teach me how to be a father. And as we mentioned earlier, my view of that was just do the opposite of what he did, and that's being a man. That's being a father. My stepfather came in and showed me a little bit of that, but it was some of those things of, you know, not to cry. You know, you think you tough and hitting me in the chest or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And trying to build that strength in me, but that was his way
Of doing
of doing it. You know, because him and his brothers grew up fighting each other all the time. So he felt that the tougher you are, the more of a man you are.
It almost seemed like some of the manhood or man values are created in trauma, you know, to cover up trauma, you know.
I agree.
So what age did he come into your life, your stepfather?
I was probably about 7th or 8th grade, somewhere up in there.
Okay.
Up until I was about a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
So I had those 4 or 5 years with him. But those things that he taught me and my uncles on his side taught me were a lot of those things that our society says in our neighborhoods what a man is.
Got you.
You know, so he taught me how to deal with those
They
things.
teach you how to survive.
How to survive, yes.
Versus,
yes.
yeah.
You know.
And that's a couple things that I learned too. My dad was there. Again, my dad is still alive and we still have a relationship with each other. But I think that a lot of people view fatherhood as being a thing that goes on from, at least in the black culture, right? That goes on from birth to 18. Then after 18, you absolve your responsibilities because that's when they deem you as a man. But also that's when child support stops and all the other stuff.
Right.
But what I realized is once I had my son, probably at the age around 38, I realized that I need my dad more now than ever. You know, and even though he has a template out there of what not to do, is what I'm basing my life or fatherhood off of, I realize that he also has time to correct and guide me into the right direction that I'm going in. So now, there's times when life is hard, you know, and the struggles with co-parenting,
Right.
and I just want to walk away. And he's like, no, stay there for your son. And I kind of look at him like, wait, you're the same dude that walked out on me.
Right.
But I realize that he doesn't want me to make the same mistakes that he made,
Right.
which helps me stay there.
It sounds like, you know, obviously, you know, the perspective of what being a man is changes over time and changes as you grow older.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that the societal version of a man, quote unquote, is, like we said, tough, no emotions, provider, you know, not willing to really show any love, consideration for much else than the man himself, you know? And that often we know leads to harm of others or
Right.
harm of themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like managing that as you get older, you know, being true to yourself rather than being true to what society thinks is a quote unquote man is really important, I think, as you have a son of your own.
Yeah, and my brothers taught me that being a man is not letting anyone talk about our mama. You know, so I will fight and not to run from fights.
Yeah.
Also, you know, a man stands and they take what's coming for him.
Right.
And a man does this or that, or a man talks to girls, or
Right.
and it
A man has multiple girls,
Yeah.
multiple women.
Yeah.
A man, yeah.
and it all depends on who is teaching you that
Right.
template.
Yeah, and like you just said, man has multiple women. That all just goes back into a man's for a man, you know,
Right.
for himself. It takes an individual thing to not let people in, to not, you know, be anything but a provider for the people that you have in front of you,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and then to retaliate to anyone who checks your manhood,
Yeah.
you know. There's a lot of times where I'm sure, because it's funny, men are the ones that hold men accountable for this stuff. There's nobody else. You don't hear a woman being like, oh, you know, sometimes it'll be like, be a man, you know? But most of the time, it's other men that are holding them accountable, you know?
But with exactly what you said, we hold each other accountable for, I think, the things that, like that, but there's other things that we don't hold each other accountable
Exactly.
for.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things that as men we need to start sitting around tables and talking about how do we hold each other accountable for those things.
Such as example, hold another man accountable for being a father to his kid, whether he can get along with the baby mom or his ex-wife or not, right? Like, we should be able to pull another man aside and be like, hey, it's a struggle.
Right.
Being a parent is not easy.
Right.
Being a single father or a estranged father is not easy.
Right.
Being married is not easy.
Right.
No matter what, I'm here for you. And I think that's the basis of this whole talk today, right? That we're all different. We all have our own struggles, but we shouldn't abandon the mission that we've been given, right?
Why don't we talk about those things though?
Because it ain't manly.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're right though. I mean, it's because we're afraid of the judgment, because it goes back to the thing of like an honor, like holding yourself as a man, like to prove that you're a man, kind of deal. And it's like some could see it as weakness. Some could see it as like, you know, you don't have as much power, quote unquote.
Right.
And so, you know, in this world, that can be frightening, and that can cause people to default to what they think is going to make them in the positions where they can have the power and they can have, you know, control over their life.
Right.
But I also think that people get offensive. Like, it's almost like you telling me my version of being a man is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, for me to come and talk to you about
Right.
that.
You're telling me I'm a failure.
Yeah, I'm a
Pretty
failure.
much.
I seen a guy walking his son the other day next to the road on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
But his son was closer to the actual cars
Oh, yeah.
on the outside. And me being across the street, I almost wanted to yell, and I had to stop myself. I was like, yo, like, you walk on the outside and put your son closer to the, you know, gate, to the inside. But as I'm watching this happen unfold, I want to yell, but I know that this is a man, and I figured that he was going to automatically get mad at me.
Of course.
Because you don't tell me how to, you know, walk with my kid. Like, who are you to tell me this? But eventually, he actually must have felt my vibe in the air, or telling him, like, yo, do this, because he actually switched. But the fact that me as a man, I could not talk to another, you know, African-American black man to tell him, like, yo, your kid should be on the inside. I feel that way.
Yeah.
To protect them. Growing up, as a son, I had so much anger towards my dad because he wasn't there, and I felt like he failed me. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Since it's Father's Day, we have to, you know, call a spade a spade. And my mom had a lot to do with that. You know, my mom would speak negative, you know, words about my dad. And as a kid, I soaked everything up, and I started looking at him from a negative light instead of a positive light. And I realized now as an adult that anger that I had towards him and his shortcomings and not being there had a lot to do with his anger towards my mom and repelling her, but also some of that repelling had to do with me because I was with her a lot of the time. But the anger that I had towards him as a kid, I now feel like pity for him as an adult. Because I realized that he didn't have the same formula, or he didn't have a good basis of a formula of, you know, what it takes to be a man or a father.
Right.
But one thing I have to say is, even in the process, before I even had my son, in the process of growing up, I have a younger brother and a younger sister also. I would give him advice about what I think he should do as a father, and he would actually take that advice and change it and start doing those things for my little brother and my little sister. So the open line of communication was there. But definitely as a kid growing up, I had so much anger towards him. What about you, Thomas?
I would say growing up, I also had that anger towards my father. Today, I still have anger towards my father.
Yeah.
That anger is a little different than what it was as a kid growing up. What I can remember from my father as a child, my mother doing the opposite of your mother. My mother, the times that I saw him, it was because she took me to see him. I can remember him saying, I'm going to come to your next baseball game or your football game, and never showing up. And it got to the point where when he would say stuff like that out of the blue moon, when I would see him every blue moon, it meant nothing because I knew he wasn't going to come.
Yeah.
So we spent periods of our life, of my life, me and my father, where I would go 10, 15 years without seeing him and without talking to him. And I would say the last time as an adult, I saw him when my grandmother passed. And before that, I hadn't seen him in about 10 years.
Yeah.
So when my grandmother passed, there was about another 15-year period that I didn't see him. He didn't meet his grandkids until they were one out of college and the other two in college.
Wow.
So there's a lot to unpack with me and my father, but as a son, I get where you're saying you almost pity him now. You know, I had a friend of mine. We were talking about this whole father relationship, and I told him that I hadn't spoken to my father in about 15 years, and he was telling me, okay, maybe you should try to mend that gap. Speak to your father, talk to your father. You know, kind of see what's going on with him. I said, all right. Begrudgingly, I did. You know, tried to form that relationship with him. But then I quickly realized that I can't have that relationship with him because there's no foundation. You know, there's no foundation. And then I also realized that I'm still fearful. You know,
For what?
because if I form that relationship with him, where's that gonna go? Or he's not gonna respond the way I think he should respond, or he's gonna let me down again.
That's what I was.
And that's that little boy in me that's still saying, you know,
you're not coming to my baseball game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, exactly.
You're not gonna come to my son's
You know,
birthday
yeah,
party. Why
so
invite you?
why invite
like
you?
You're not consistent and reliable.
yeah.
But
So
do you feel like it's one of those things though too, where, and this is a question for you too, where it's like if you hold a grudge, it'll hold you too.
Oh yeah, you become a prisoner of your own line that you draw.
Yeah.
When the moment that you draw a line in the sand, you're saying you don't cross this, but at the same time, you won't cross it. If my dad can't cross it to come over, I refuse to cross it to go onto his side either. And that's the thing about parenting. And I can tell you right now, my dad was in my life around the age of 5, like with Jackson. I am fearful that I'm not going to be the amazing dad that I imagined I was going to be. And I can't imagine leaving my son now at 5. And then my son having the same perspective that I have now at this age of life.
Right. But I think that perspective comes from our fathers and our relationships with them. And I think we have to realize that we're not our fathers.
Right.
We are not our fathers, and just the fact that you are having these type of conversations and still in Jackson's life shows you that, you know, or it shows me that, you know, I've been there for my kids, you know. So no matter how I feel those negative vibes or those negative things that, you know, I may turn out to be my father,
Right.
I have to also give myself a little credit and say, I'm not him, you know. But
And I feel like though, me thinking about my own as a son as well, you know, there's a lot of parallels that we can draw between the stories of y'all growing up and myself as well. And what I think is, you know, like you say, the what you expectations or what you expect when growing up. And for me, you know, even though my father was very supportive and everything, there was that emotional side, like we said, of being a man. And so for me, I would say I'm an emotional person. I express my emotions. You know, I tell people I love them that when I feel that way. But my father's complete opposite. You know, and so for me growing up, he doesn't like you know, give the recognition and say I love you and say all that stuff, right? So I just never expected it. You know, similar to when you say you don't expect him to show up for a baseball game, I'm not expecting to say I'm proud of you after I do something, even if it's the biggest thing ever.
right.
Yeah.
And so there's parallels, I think, even though I grew up in a 2-parent household. I grew up with my dad throughout my life, where we have our expectations of what to get out of our fathers as a son. And those are things that have just carry out throughout fatherhood. You know, you either don't want to repeat, or maybe you even catch yourself repeating, and it's just what you know.